Well, hello and welcome to In the Growth Space. My name is David, and I am really glad that you've joined me here on the podcast. If you would do me a favor, please go out and rate the podcast. Give us a 5-star rating. That'll really help us to spread the word and help impact other leaders. Give us a review as well. And if you would, hit subscribe. We'd love to have you as a regular subscriber or regular listener. We've got a lot of great episodes that are coming up, and we've had a lot of great episodes. Just recently, we got a chance to interview Tony Horton, one of the guys that I have been wanting to have on the podcast for quite some time. That was really exciting. So before I get into today's episode, though, I just wanted to, for those of you who are new, just give you a brief introduction of myself. I spent the last 10 years in leadership development, coaching executives, coaching leadership teams, emerging leaders. And prior to that, I had 32 years in a career in the insurance industry. I've started multiple companies. I've exited 2 companies. And so I've had a lot of experience in leadership. I feel like I've been in leadership my entire career. I was one of those personal development junkies, so to speak. I started out my career listening to Tony Robbins, Dennis Waitley, so many other in the personal growth space. And I have taken all of those lessons and the lessons that I've learned in my own business journey and helped then other leaders to grow. And really that's the focus of this podcast, is to help leaders to grow. I'm doing a little bit of a series here now on just really common elements of leadership, common elements of leadership that drive high performance. And last time I focused on emerging leaders. And what I want to talk about today really is the elements of both emerging and senior leaders that create high performance for both teams and companies and a high-performing culture. So culture really is how we do things around here. It's how we behave, how we act. And so high performance really becomes systemic after a while. And the place we have to start, though, is leadership. What is it? How do you define leadership? I really do like John Maxwell's definition. John says that leadership is influence, nothing more and nothing less. So it's influence. And while I agree with John, I think it's not enough. I think that when we think about influence, we have to ask, influence towards what end? And one of the things that I believe in our context here for today is that leadership is influence that really works in harmony with other people to achieve our goals. And that's really what creates high performance and high performance leadership. And really, the one thing that I know is that we definitely need a team to achieve goals of high value. We cannot do it ourselves. And with any team of human beings, it takes leadership. It takes influence. And each component of our Emerging Leader Academy takes members through a process to learn and grow their influence so that they can help the team as a whole win. And so we're going to talk a little bit about some of those elements here today and what drives high performance in leaders. So the first component that drives high performance in leaders is really vision and strategic alignment. So we've got to have a clear vision. We have to have a clear mission, and we have to have a compelling vision for guiding the organization. So if we don't have something that drives us and we have a vision that we're moving towards, we're not going to have goals that come from that vision that will help us to achieve the vision. So as human beings, we actually think in pictures. So as a leader, if you can create a picture for the future that is compelling and that will help guide the organization and guide the team, and you're very clear about that vision, and you repeat it over and over and over again, that's going to be one of the keys to creating a high-performing organization and a high-performing company. So one of the things that we do in the Emerging Leader Academy is to teach leaders how to create that vision. How we create a vision that's aligned with our values, because one of the first things we have to do is actually articulate our values. Once we do that, then we can create that vision and then align that vision with our mission, and then our goals will come from that vision and that purpose or that mission. And one of the things that high-performing leaders do is they communicate this vision often. They don't just put it on a piece of paper, stick it in a drawer or in a binder and stick it on the shelf, or even put it on the wall. They talk about it over and over and over again. So if we are going to create a high-performing team, we have to create a vision that's not only compelling, that's clear, but it's also communicated over and over and over again. So make sure that you are creating that vision that is very clear and compelling for your team. Part of having a vision that's compelling is that our goals and objectives will then come from that vision. So having a vision that's clear will allow us to have goals that emanate from that vision and that mission, and constantly communicating that will keep those goals. It'll keep the vision top of mind, and having some kind of a ritual that you can incorporate to talk about your vision, to talk about your goals all the time, will help you in this communication process and help you to keep the vision and the goals aligned. So keeping our team aligned really comes from communicating frequently, communicating regularly, and having some kind of a cadence where you can keep our goals and our vision top of mind. And that alignment then comes because of that repetition. So keeping our priorities front of mind, and then creating some way for your leaders to create a calendar management and managing the calendar based on those priorities is really going to be how you align your team and how the team then will execute on that vision. So a lot of habits, a lot of repetition and human behavior is involved in aligning our vision and our goals. Now, secondly, we have to have effective communication as a leader. And effective communication really comes from being transparent. Being able to be open and transparent with our communication will build trust. It'll build accountability. Being able to share from our heart, give our teams the ability to know us, the ability to understand where we're coming from, and really to understand what is important in our strategy and in our mission. So being very transparent, being able to share things that maybe ordinary leaders don't share, like why we're doing what we're doing, what the purpose of our vision is, and maybe even what went into creating the vision, and where your heart is as a leader. So if you're a leader and you have a team, being able to be very open and transparent with the why behind the vision, the why behind the goals, is going to help them to kind of rally around those goals and be able to help you then achieve the objectives that you're setting for them. One of the ways that we can be more effective as a communicator as well is simply listening. You've heard me often, if you've been a listener for a little while, you've heard me talk about being a generous listener. And I think that being a generous listener will help us to communicate better because we are understanding our people better. And we're also listening to their perspectives and listening to what they have to say about challenges, about successes. But being able to listen is a very key element of communicating effectively. The other thing too is creating feedback loops, making sure that we are listening for feedback and we're also giving feedback. In the Emerging Leader Academy, we talk about how to deliver effective feedback and how to help your leaders to create feedback that is that's responsive and helpful. So creating those feedback loops is another way to be an effective communicator. There's a book that I read not long ago, and the author was actually on the podcast. It's called How to Listen, and it's by Oscar Trimboli. And I believe it was episode, I don't even remember what the episode number is. But if you go back, if you search for Oscar Trimboli, listen to that episode. That is a great episode on generous listening, one of the key elements of becoming an effective communicator. The other thing that high-performing leaders do is they empower and engage their teams. Now, how do they do that? Well, empowering them means that they're going to give them not only just the responsibility, but the authority to act, being able to allow them to act and maybe even fail because they need to try new things. That's empowering them, giving them the ability to think on their own and to ask good questions and empowering them to make decisions that they need to make, and they don't really need to come to you for those decisions. So empowering our team members will give them engagement and will help them to even be better leaders because they're going to try new things. They're going to learn from the things that don't go well and also the things that do go well. So I know that being an effective communicator and an effective leader of high-performing teams really means empowering our teams. Now, the third element of a high-performing leader and a leader who creates high-performing teams is a strong organizational culture. One of the elements of culture is definitely values. So we have to articulate our values. And I know many companies articulate their values, but they never really talk about them. The one thing that I like to do, though, one step further from values is to create organizational behaviors of success. So oftentimes I'll call these fundamentals, and the term fundamentals comes from David Friedman of CultureWise. I've learned so much from David and his work in the culture field of developing high-performing cultures. And it's one thing to have values, but it's another thing to actually have behaviors that can map to the values. But sometimes just having a behavior of high performance may not necessarily map to one of the values, but that doesn't mean that it's not critical for our success. So creating behaviors that will lead to our success is part of creating a high performing culture. Now we can articulate, we can define what those behaviors are, but if we don't practice them, if we don't create rituals around talking about them all the time, keeping them top of mind, we're never going to create a culture that really executes on the behaviors. And so creating a high-performing culture, a culture of performance, requires us to define the behaviors that will lead to our success and then talking about them all the time. And then what that culture will do is it creates an environment of collaboration and teamwork. And collaboration is so important in the world that we live in. There is absolutely no way that one individual leader has all the answers and can do everything themselves. We need each other. We need a team around us. We need people who are playing to their strengths so that we can then play to our strengths and then through those strengths really execute the vision that we have as leaders and that we want for our team and for our company. So creating a collaborative environment really requires us to have our culture defined and have that definition in terms of behaviors. Now, that's not to say that values don't matter. I want to be clear about that. Values do matter, but I think that we have to take it one step further. We have to go from values to what are those behaviors that are informed by our values. What will we do? How do we act? How do we behave around here? Those are elements of a high-performing culture. Now, the fourth element is continuous learning and development. Any leader who is going to have a high-performing team will be committed to continual growth. They'll have a growth mindset. They'll have a opportunities to think deeply, to create environment of growth. They'll be parts of masterminds. They'll be parts of what we call inner circles. Inner circle groups help our leaders to be able to really kind of like sharpen each other, like iron sharpening iron, being able to question each other, being able to learn from other leaders. That commitment to growth is what creates a high-performing team. And when we create a high-performing team around growth then requires innovation. And that just simply means being able to think differently, think new ways of doing things, being able to adapt, being able to change. Last episode, I gave you the framework, the changes framework. So if you missed that episode, go back and check out the framework of changes, because it definitely takes the way we think, the way we feel, acting and our beliefs and taking care of ourselves. It takes guts. It takes, being able to act in the face of fear. It takes the environment around us, and it really takes the spirit that's within us. So all of those elements of change are really what encompasses innovation and encouraging innovation. And keep in mind that when we encourage innovation, the requirement is that you have to be good with failure, because there are going to be some things that work. There are going to be often things that don't work, and that's okay. You have to be good with that. If you're going to encourage innovation, you have to encourage people to take risks, and taking risks means failure, because failure is part of the process. And so encouraging innovation is just one more way that high-performing leaders create that performance in their teams and in their company. The fifth element is accountability and performance management. Oftentimes, this can be a stepping stone that people trip over. So accountability can have a negative connotation, but I believe that accountability is a positive thing. When I think about accountability, it's really being able to have the ability to be held to the commitments that I've said I'm going to commit to. So having some outside myself to help me to really do the things that I said I'm going to do, that's really what accountability is. And then not only just do the things that I said I was going to do, but when I don't do those things, somebody who supports me and helps me to think about what got in the way. What got in the way of me performing the way I said I wanted to perform? And that really, I think, is the element of performance management. Having a supportive environment where we try to understand what gets in the way. What are the common things that trip us up? There could be fear. Maybe there's something that we were afraid of and we didn't follow through. Maybe there was something that we didn't expect. And even though we said we wanted to do something, we committed to do something, maybe because we were afraid, we didn't do it. So whatever that is, having a leader who understands that and is supportive and asks the question, what can I do to help you? What can I do to help you honor the commitments that you made or that you're making and want to make? So that performance management is very, very key to any kind of a high-performing team. So creating accountability and actually one of the things I want to say about performance management too is that performance management is not a one-time-a-year activity. So performance management, I know historically there's the annual review, but if you're not doing weekly or at least bi-weekly one-to-one meetings with your team, you're not really helping them to learn and to grow and staying connected with them. So I want to encourage you, if you're not doing regular one-to-one meetings with your team, start that process and that practice right now. It doesn't have to be an hour-long meeting. I had a leader one time say, hey, I've got 30 one-to-one direct reports. How in the world am I ever going to get anything else done if I'm going to spend time with each of them? Well, they were coming from this perspective that each meeting had to be an hour long. That's not the case. Meetings don't have to be an hour long. They don't even have to be 30 minutes long. They could actually be 15 minutes if you need them. They could be shorter, but have a one-to-one meeting. Have some kind of a structure that creates some accountability, that creates a check-in, that creates connection. Because when you're connecting to your team, when you're reminding them of their objectives on a regular basis, it stays top of mind. It's so easy, especially in the corporate environment, to allow objectives to get put in a drawer or on a review sheet and never talked about again until the next year. I know I've dealt with employees and leaders who that happens. And so if you want to be an effective and a high-performing leader, create one-to-ones that often will talk about the objectives that they have, the objectives that your people have set, the goals that they've set, and the growth that they want to achieve. So keep it front of mind. So the last element that I'm going to talk about of a high-performing leader and a high-performing team is emotional intelligence and empathy. So emotional intelligence is really having the self-awareness of your own emotion and emotional makeup. Being able to understand and name the energy in motion, emotion, energy in motion, that energy in motion within you, and being able to recognize it, to name it, and to be able to regulate it appropriately is a huge skill that I believe is going to be even more necessary as we continue to move into the future that is constantly changing and creating so many new challenges. So emotional intelligence and understanding what those emotions do and how they work and what's driving them is going to be a very key element to high-performing leaders. The second component of emotional intelligence and empathy is empathy. And empathy really is being able to understand someone else's perspective, being able to understand them. And you can only do that when you get really curious about that other person, to be able to ask them questions, to be able to then listen generously, to not jump to conclusions, to not make stuff up in your head, and to be able to actually allow them to tell you what their perspective is. Having other people's interests at heart and empathizing with their perspective, empathizing with their own emotions and their own situation will help you to manage and develop that relationship and develop that other leader. You see, high-performing leaders really want to develop other leaders. They want to multiply their influence. And so in order to do that, they have to connect with other people. They have to understand other people. And the only way we can do that is through empathy. So if I were to recap the session today and this episode, I just want to summarize the common leadership elements that high-performing leaders practice. The first is having a strategic alignment through creating a clear and compelling vision. That's the first element. The second is having effective communication. And effective communication really starts with great listening, being able to listen generously, and then being able to then speak straight as well. The other element, the third element, really is having a strong organizational culture. And the only way we can have a strong organizational culture is to first define it and then ritualize how we practice it, how we talk about it, how we implement those elements and those defined behaviors. The fourth element is continuous learning and development. One of the things that great leaders do is they're constantly learning. They're constantly being exposed to other thought leaders, podcasts like this one, books, being mentored, being coached. And so that continuous learning and development is another key for high-performing leaders and high-performing organization. The fifth element is really all about accountability and performance management. And I almost hesitate to use the word performance management. I really like to use the word performance leadership, because it's leading somebody in the performance that they want to have, and they want to perform the way they want to perform, and the behaviors that they need. And this is a whole nother podcast episode, but we have to be able to get inside people's heads, and we have to be able to understand their conscious thinking and their subconscious beliefs and their belief patterns, because their emotions drive their behaviors, and those behaviors then create the results they're getting. So if our results aren't what we like and what we're expecting, then we have to change beliefs. And the only way we can change beliefs is change behaviors. We have to change beliefs. So beliefs drive behaviors, which create results. That's a whole nother episode. We actually go into the unconscious mind in the Emerging Leader Academy. So I'd love to share a little bit more about the Emerging Leader Academy in just a moment. And if you want an expanded explanation of what the Emerging Leader Academy is, please go back to the last episode. I explained a little bit more in detail what we've done to create the Emerging Leader Academy, and also a holiday offer that really is I think an amazing offer, because we're creating a way for you to have your entire leadership team join for one low investment rather than a per member investment. And we're giving it at a 30% discount, a holiday discount. So we'd love to have you join us in the Emerging Leader Academy. If you want to find out more information about that, go to davidmcglennon.com/ELA. Stands for Emerging Leader Academy. All right, the last element that I wanted to recap was emotional intelligence and empathy. If we can get in touch with our own emotions, if we can increase our emotional intelligence, meaning if we can self-regulate, if we can name the emotions that are going on within us, if we can also understand the other person from the other person's perspective, and even understand their emotions, that's going to be so helpful, and it will create a high-performing leader. And I think this element is probably one of the more key elements of a high-performing leader that will be very useful in the coming years. So my call to action, what do I want you to do with this information? Well, first and foremost, I want you to become a high-performing leader. I want you to put something that you heard today into practice. Maybe it's just continual learning. Maybe it's creating your own vision. Maybe it's creating a better communication strategy. Maybe it's learning to be an emotionally intelligent leader. And you can do that a number of different ways. But whatever it is for you, I hope that you will put something into practice that you heard today. Most importantly, I'd love to get to know you better. And the one way that I can do that, and that you can do that, getting to know me better, is to join our Emerging Leader Academy. So go to our website, davidmcglennon.com/ELA. Find out more about it. If you want to set up a short call with me, I'd be happy to tell you a little bit more about it. Understand a little bit more too about your situation, your leadership team, and we'd love to be able to have you join the Emerging Leader Academy. Now, just to give you a quick teaser for our next episode, we've got an amazing guest coming on, a leader who has not only just grown himself, but he's also invested in his team. His team has been a part of the Advancing Leader Inner Circle. We've done some actual one-to-one coaching with his team. They're going to be a part of the Emerging Leader Academy going forward. Pete Beck has worked with a number of different Fortune 500 companies. He's dealt with companies like Nike, Microsoft, Apple, Starbucks, and so many other major brands. He's got a perspective that's helped him to grow not only personally, but it's helping him to grow this small and growing company right now called 49 Degrees. And I'm so excited to share this episode with you. So stay tuned. Make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss that episode. And until next time, leaders, be well and keep on leading.